first one that I'll be talking about is Millwoods. And I was actually born and raised in Millwoods. I grew up on the Millwoods golf course. It's a lovely community. And the first thing I want to say about Millwoods is what I would say is most likely the biggest and most common misconception about Millwoods. And that misconception is that Millwoods is a neighborhood. And Millwoods isn't really a neighborhood. Millwoods is a giant district. For those of you from Vancouver, Millwoods is a lot like Surrey in terms of size and in terms of demographic. And you can see Millwoods is made up of all of these constituent neighborhoods. So when people say Millwoods, oftentimes they have in mind this part of Millwoods or that part of Millwoods, and it makes the conversation not really that congruent, because I could say Millwoods and I could be thinking about Greenview. Somebody else could say Millwoods and be thinking about this Knotwood area, and the difference between Knotwood and Greenview is very substantial. So we're going to take Millwoods and we're going to break it down into a couple of different zones, because Millwoods is actually a very popular area that a lot of investors like investing in. So let's talk about the tenant demographics in Millwoods and what you can expect if you think about investing there. In Millwoods, there's a lot of low income to middle income developments that are interspersed together. What that means is you'll see a lot of communities full of houses, and then right in the center of the community, you'll see a townhouse complex that's targeted at more of a low income or a starter home type of demographic. And so Millwoods has a very mixed population in that way. It's not like all of the lower income section is put in one spot. It's sprinkled throughout the entire community. So it makes for a very diverse population. There's a lot of middle class families, and I would say that is an average tenant profile with an average income from that tenant profile. What I describe Millwoods as is a steady Eddie neighborhood. You're going to find a lot of tenants who have good jobs, solid incomes, but are also the kind of people that are going to rent for a much longer than average term, which makes for a really great tenant population, and it makes for a really good acquisition strategy. You're going to see a large working class population there. And one of the other nice things in Millwoods is that there's actually multiple schools interspersed throughout the entire neighborhood. Pretty much every single one of these individual little pieces has its own elementary school. I went to Greenview Elementary School, there's Hillview Elementary School, and each one of these individual little pockets has a school in it. So what does that mean for tenants? Well, it means that when your tenants have kids that are going in the school, they're going to be a lot more inclined to stay in one place, because obviously people want their kids to stay in school and they don't like moving their kids if they don't have to. So you get a lot more tenant loyalty with your suites. The types of properties that most of my clients like to target in Millwoods, well, you're going to see older properties. Most of Millwoods was built from the late 70s to the early 90s, and it's a really good place to find that really nice balance of stable tenant profile while still having high cash flow, because those prices aren't at the peak of prices in Edmonton. Again, they're closer to average. And so because you have average prices and average rents, what you're going to end up seeing are really solid cash flows. Most of what I see targeted in Millwoods from my client base are suited houses or houses with the potential to build basement suites in. So you can see bungalows in the low 300s, you put a suite in, and the price is now in the mid to high 400s. That's a very typical equation in Millwoods. I would proceed with caution in Millwoods if you're looking at half duplexes or a lot of the townhouses there. I'm not saying don't go in that direction, but be aware that the half duplexes and the townhouses are going to be in that $200,000 to $250,000 range. And so you're going to be getting the tenant profile that's at that lower income bracket, and oftentimes, again, be a little more cautious. So if I was going to break Millwoods down into its specific zones, I've put the most important infrastructure in purple. So we've got an LRT stop that's going here, here, and here. There's a hospital right here, and Millwoods Town Center is right here. So the area in light green is kind of my most favorite zone. The areas in green are the areas that I'd recommend investing, and then the areas in red are kind of the don't go there pockets. So like I said, when people say Millwoods, oftentimes they think about the don't go there pockets, especially because in the mid 90s, there was a lot of crime in Millwoods. However, that was 20 years ago. Millwoods is a much more diverse and a much more flourishing community now, and there are still a couple of pockets that are trouble, but for the most part, it's a great area to invest. The area that you might want to keep an eye on is right here, because right now, this is the Millbourne Mall area. It's a very challenging area, and there's actually a mobile home community right there in the middle of the city that has a very high crime rate in it. But there could be huge potential to transition when this LRT stop comes in.